the longest running, continuously running municipal bands in the state. And we're thankful that you're here to celebrate your 4th of July with us. Typically on a concert like this, we would open with the national anthem, but we're going to preclude that. We're going to precede that just a little bit. On a night that celebrates our nation's history, such as this one does, we thought we would include a piece by Gillis entitled The Ceremony of Allegiance, which includes some narration, both of the preamble of the Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance. So we thought that might be a nice way to open the concert tonight. It will be immediately then followed by the national anthem. Tom Miles has agreed to do the narration tonight, so if you would please rise and remove your hats, and we'll get things started.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain. We establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the perfection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.
Obviously, tonight we would like to honor not only our country but also our veterans, and there'll be more about that later. But this first piece is about a composer who had the same idea in mind. James Swearingen wrote about this next piece. He is my hero. He's my father. Bruce Swearingen, like many other American patriots, served his country with dignity, honor, and without expectations of fanfare or glory. It should be noted that he was a soldier in the United States Army during World War II, 1944, and the Allied forces have liberated France from German occupation. My father's job was to go in and disarm bombs that had failed to detonate during the previous air attacks. The imminent danger from this assignment was heightened, and when, after being specifically trained to work on German and Japanese armament, the bombs were in reality dropped by American and British pilots during the reclaiming of France. In those private moments when I had to thank him for his courage and valor, he simply says, "I was just doing my job." Let's be forever mindful that while our great nation looks to the future, we should never forget the sacrifices and contribution of our heroes to the past. James Swearingen penned those words about his dad for a piece entitled "Lest We Forget." Well, we would like to provide a little contrast here. This is maybe not necessarily a patriotic tune, but I think is a great representation of some other things. This is the Olympic Fanfare and Theme, written in 1984 by John Williams. Williams, who you hear about a lot out here just because I love him as a composer. I don't think you can say too much about the man. He retired recently, and of this work, in 1984, he was commissioned to do the entrance music for the Los Angeles Games. And he said, "The Olympic Games continue to fascinate and inspire each one of us. With every presentation of the Games, we experience that complete dedication and unshakable will to preserve that which typifies the goal of each competitor. The human spirit soars, and we strive for the best that's within us. I dedicate it lovingly to all participating athletes for whom we derive so much strength and inspiration." One of my favorite themes of John Williams, again, from the 1984 Olympics, the Olympic Fanfare and theme. Some music friends and I were talking the other day, and the question that was posed was, do you think these composers, whether it's popular music or concert music or whatever, do you think they know? Do you think they know when they really hit it? Do you think Glenn Miller knew when he wrote In the Mood that it was going to become what it was? And I don't think we ever really answered the question, but I'd like to go back and ask Catherine Bates. Catherine Bates and Samuel Ward, who never met each other actually. Catherine Bates was on a train ride across the country and headed to Colorado. She was going to do a little sabbatical from the university she taught at back east, and was going out to Colorado, and wrote a poem called Pike's Peak. And she was inspired by the things that she saw, the wheat fields that we have here, and all the beauty as you travel across this country. The poem, of course, gained lots and lots of popularity, and eventually Samuel Ward got a hold of it and he said, well, I think I could put a melody with that. So the two of them, who never met, put this thing together that we now know as America the Beautiful. And I would love to ask her, did this feel any differently when you wrote this than the other things that you've written? Because certainly she wrote many, many bodies of works. You can go look them up. You can find them on the internet. But I'm always intrigued by the beginning of the story. And the end of the story is always where the fun happens. But the beginning of the story sometimes is more interesting to me. We'd like to do this arrangement of America the Beautiful. This is by James Swearingen, the original text, once again, by Catherine Bates, and music by Samuel Ward. Well, it's time for our Children's March. It's our tradition to have a parade of sorts at each concert, so any children in the audience can come forward. We'll give you an American flag, and you can join in. And what better composer to play for a Children's March than John Philip Sousa? We'd like to offer up Semper Fidelis, or shortened most generally to Semper Fi, meaning always faithful. It's the motto for the United States Marine Corps. And we actually have someone who's played in the United States Marine Band over here, Bill Robinson, played in China, is that right? Right after World War II, was in China playing with the United States Marine Band, so we have a few more links than what you might think. John Philip Sousa, American March composer. This is Semper Fidelis. I can't help it. I look at kids and I think of all the stories I've heard. There were two kids that went to a parochial school and they were going down the food line, and then there's bowls of fruit and this, that, and the other. And right next to the apple bowl, there was "Take one, God is watching." So the two little children dutifully took one apple and off they went. They got to the end of the table and there's a big bowl of cookies. And the little boy leaned to the little girl and said, "Take all the cookies you want. God's watching the apples." So, On that note, we'd like to keep going on our concert tonight. We'll play Victory at Sea. Richard Rodgers was very, very famous for having written all kinds of Broadway musicals with his partner Oscar Hammerstein. But in the early 50s, not too long after World War II was over, he was actually contacted by NBC. They wanted to do a series entitled Victory at Sea about wartime in general, and about more specifically naval battles. Rodgers, fresh off all these Broadway musicals and all this success, was hired to do the musical score, and so we thought we'd include 3 themes from that show tonight. These are Song of the High Seas, the Guadalcanal March, and the Hymn of Victory. Well, there's a few things that I like to do on every concert. I like to do a little jazz, a little popular music, and I always like to put a hymn in there somewhere. This is Eternal Father, Strong to Save. This is traditionally associated with seafarers. It was written in 1860 and popularized by the Royal Navy and the United States Navy, and eventually sort of also adopted by the Coast Guard and the United States Marine Corps. This is a great old arrangement by James Ployhar entitled Navy Hymn. Well, we've had our kids march, so we'd like to have a virtual parade. You won't need any extra 3D glasses or anything for this one, though. This next work, it was written by F.W. Meacham. It's entitled American Patrol, and it's written to simulate you watching a parade go by. Now, the band's not going to move, so if you're expecting that to happen, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But the piece is composed so that at the very beginning, it's very, very quiet. It seems as if the band is at a great distance away. It's going to start with only just a few players. And as the piece progresses, then we'll have more and more and more as if the band is right in front of you, nice and big and loud. And then we will eventually depart and be off in the distance somewhere, with the exception of a short little rousing rendition of Yankee Doodle at the end. I'm not exactly sure what he was thinking there. The band and I were joking last night, maybe that was the flute player that was late and they're running to catch up. I don't know. However you want to fill that in is fine with us. But F.W. Meacham, you'll hear, in addition to Yankee Doodle, American Patrol, Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, and a little bit of Dixie. We hope you like it. widely considered to be one of the greatest American composers, or songwriters at least in American history. Irving Berlin, we're going to do a collection of his works. He was actually born in Russia. His family moved to the country in, I talked myself into a corner. He was five at the time when they moved to this country. His first song netted him a handy profit of 33 cents, royalty and publishing rights. He's written the following works, which will be included in this composition. This is the Army, Mr. Jones. Give me your tired, your poor. This is a great country, and God bless America. seems to be an evening well suited to play some marches, so we thought we'd play another march for you. This is a great concert march by a composer that sometimes flies a little bit under the radar. You go to concerts like this, you of course hear John Philip Sousa, Carl King, Henry Fillmore, Harold Bennett. You hear all those names quite a little bit, but you don't really hear George Kinney. In fact, it's fairly, you'd almost say it's unrecognizable, mostly because he doesn't exist. This was actually a pen name used by Kenneth George Whitcomb. Whitcomb was a saxophonist and arranger at the United States Academy of West Point for several, I think 14 years. And is not nearly as well known as some of the other composers, but I thought this just had a great feel to it. It feels very American march to us, and also has a few interesting twists and turns that you don't always get to hear out of a march. So this is by George Kinney, Jubilee March. We have just a few more things for you, but before I go, it's great to be the director of the band because my brother, who may be out there somewhere, texted me a little while ago and said, well, what are you playing tonight? And I said, well, I'm going to play a Mallard baton. It's about 14 inches long. It was tuned at the factory. There's not a single wrong note in it. And he responded in kind. And I'm reminded continually that it's so much fun to be in front of this group. It's a real joy, and people automatically, I think, assume that because I stand in front, that I'm somehow in charge of things. And I'm actually, the reverse is true. I'm so bad they don't let me play. They just put me in front, so I don't really get to do anything. But it is a real privilege and pleasure and honor to stop clapping. You're fired. It is a pleasure and honor to direct this group. So before we finish up the concert with these last few things, how about one more hand for the musicians on the stage, shall we? We'd like to wrap up with just a few things that I think every patriotic concert ought to have. The first one is our state song. It is arranged by Jim Barnes from the, where's he from? So the University of Kansas. They apparently have some sort of little technical school up there in Lawrence. They put them out by the river where the land is cheap. Yeah. Anyway, Jim Barnes, a real asset to Kansas, internationally known composer, has written some fantastic things. And I think probably, we talked about the origins of pieces. I think he probably just kind of arranged this off the cuff. The marching band did it numerous times, and it has since just become this expectation when you hear the state song. I suppose there are other arrangements out there, but I don't really know of any that are played with the great frequency that this one is. So Jim Barnes, who is now Professor Emeritus at the University of Kansas, did I say that right? University of Kansas. Arranged this several years ago for marching band, and it's just been adapted for just about every group you can imagine. Here is our state song, Home on the Range. Well, I get a little choked up every year when I get to this point because I have to talk about the Armed Forces Salute, and your perspective changes when you watch family members take off on a plane to go to parts unknown, or you can't put into words what it feels like when that plane finally lands. We're all, I think, very touched in those moments, and it's hard to describe what comes over you to know what's going on. To get intermittent contact, they can't say too much, they say a little bit. You hear in the news about artillery shells going off, but they can't say anything. And I think your perspective has really, really changed when you have a family member that goes overseas. And I think we're all touched and affected by that. My brother has been overseas. My grandfather, my wife's grandfather, was a colonel in World War II. Talks about the landing vessel that he was on in Africa being hit and scavenging for weapons before he went to shore, and all those sorts of stories. So I don't think you really can put words behind all of that. We try on occasions like this, but I think it's important. Like James Swearingen said earlier, lest we forget. I think it's important that we have times like this, and important that we remember, it's not just about fireworks and waving the flag and cute babies that are on the stage, but it's about a whole lot more. And I invite, especially you young folks, I never thought I'd say that. I'm only 46. Especially you young folks, you need to go hear these stories. You need to go find someone who walks in front of the VFW, or you need to go interrupt one of the senior citizens pool tournaments or something, and you need to just go let them talk to you for a while, because there's a tremendous history and legacy and wisdom that this generation will miss, I think, if we don't have those conversations. So we are pleased, thank you, we are pleased and proud to be a part of the celebration tonight from a place in my heart that I couldn't describe, so I will just leave it at thank you. We're going to do the Armed Forces Salute next. The service songs are all represented in the Armed Forces Salute. If you or a close family member served or are serving now, we would invite you to stand and be recognized and honored for your service. The order of the tunes will be first Army, then Coast Guard, Marines, Air Force, and Navy is the order of the tunes in there. And then we would like to end the evening with our national march, the Stars and Stripes Forever. We're very blessed and honored that you shared this evening with us. I hope that you have all of the experiences and memories from the 4th of July that you can muster up. And like I say, go have those conversations and think of that. Thanks for coming. Well, from the bottom of our hearts, thanks for joining us tonight. Have a safe rest of the evening.